Hello, everyone. My name's Megan,
And I'm Lauren.
and this is the AskARoofer Podcast. And today we have a very special guest, Kyle Nurmanen from the Metal Roof Experts. Hi, Kyle. How you doing?
Hey, Megan. Good. I'm doing good today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you on. So let's dive right in and have you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Okay. My name is Kyle Nurmanen. I've been in commercial residential roofing for nearly 20 years now, most of which has been down here. I was kind of broken into back hurricanes. So I've seen all types of roof system failures. I've worked for 3 of the top 15 national roofing companies. So I've had a considerable background in proactive maintenance, portfolio management, community association, phasing, giant, big projects, so on and so forth. And I spent a little bit of a hiatus there for a few years, specializing in coatings. And now I'm with Total Roofing System and Dynamic Metals in Southeast Florida, focusing strictly on metal applications. Although I've had a portfolio, a resume of all types of roofing, but I'm focusing strictly on the metal right now.
Very cool. So today we are talking about attached roof systems. Can you tell us what an attached roof system is and where these are commonly seen?
So there are multiple types of attached roof systems, but for the purpose of this conversation today, we're specifically talking about residential communities, condos, quadplexes, road apartment complexes, duplexes, and such, where any one unit, the roof system is tied into another. So quadplex, for instance, or obviously a duplex, roofing on slope. One half of the roof is over one residence, and the other half is over another. So anywhere where if you try to re-roof just one unit, you're going to have an issue with the whole building not being re-roofed at the one time. So that's what we're focusing on today.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Amazing.
That's what I have then in my condo.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like that is so common, like condos and townhomes and duplex and quadplex are becoming more and more common. So I think this is a really important topic. So, Kyle, when there's an HOA involved, who is responsible for the roof? The homeowner, the HOA, kind of both? Dive into that for us.
Well, that's the problem, Megan, is that it's not always consistent. Every
Mhm.
community is different. Sometimes the HOA is um, involved on a limited level. Like they'll tell you what specifications you can put on your roof, but they leave you primarily responsible for all roofing. Some HOAs will handle proactive maintenance and repairs and maintenance to keep the roofs clean and do things like that as a community. And then the re-roof would have to be with you for you. Some do it totally opposite, where the community will ultimately re-roof, but any repairs in the meantime over your specific unit, you would have to incur that cost. So and then there's HOAs that do it all, and there's HOAs and condo associations that have you solely responsible. So that is what we need to have a discussion about today. And I think people really need to understand that there are a multitude of differences, and we're going to get to the end of this thing and ask people what they need to questions they need to ask.
Mhm.
Where would people look for that information? Like, would they just ask their HOA, who's responsible for the roof? Would it be in their bylaws?
Yes, yeah. It's going to be in their bylaws. It's going to be, anytime you're looking to purchase in a community, you're going to want to ask what the association rules and regulations are, what involves the roofing. You also want to look at the timeline of the HOA and the roofing in the entire community. Often these are all built at once, and they are becoming more and more popular because we are trying to corral our people. Let's not get political about it, but we're trying to build so we keep more people under one roof. And it's more efficient for the builder. It's more efficient for construction. It's more efficient for everything, but not necessarily for the homeowner and the investor. So that's where it really gets complicated. So you need to ask those questions when you're looking into those types of communities. What am I responsible for? People can't. Some people hate HOAs. Some people love them. You really need to know whether you're going to really do you want to turn over that decision to an entire board of people that are retired or have a knowledge from someplace else and not necessarily from this environment. You got to ask about the board. What is it made up of? It's people that live in this community that are making these decisions on your investment if the HOA is responsible for it. So a lot of homeowners say, no, I want to be responsible for my roof system. However, what about your neighbor? Maybe your neighbor doesn't care about his, and his is attached to yours. So this is where it really gets ugly. When the HOA does not handle the roofing project, when you buy into a community that was all built in 2 years, and they're all the roofs are 20 years old, and you're about to buy in it, so they're all getting ready for a re-roof. How's this going to go down? What's my additional cost going to be, and what are my options going to be?
Yeah, wow. So many things to think about when you're buying, and also if you already live in an HOA condo situation with this process. So, how does the roofing process from your perspective change when there's an HOA involved um, for a homeowner?
Well, that's the first thing we have to find out. We have to find out, what do they cover? How are these decisions made? So with 20 years in this field, I spend a lot of time. Um, a lot of times, if a community is large enough, they'll create a whole separate board, or committee to start researching. They know their roofing's coming up, and they'll start researching, what are our possibilities, what are our options, what are we going to do here. A lot of people want to go to metal because here in Florida, the wind uplift standards and the longevity are far superior, and the energy efficiency. And you know, if my neighbor has tile, his tile roof flies in a hurricane and hits my roof and damages my roof. I don't want any of that. We want it all to go metal, what have you. However, a lot of people don't understand that there's a wide spectrum of metal roof applications, that there's the cheapest, and then there's the most expensive. And there's certain reasons why you would choose one or the other. So I get involved on the front end to try to to help boards and these types of committees realize that, and educate them in all the metal spectrum, and realize that you're looking for something that's not going to that's not going to take away from the property value. It's not going to take away from the community value. A lot of people don't realize that. They think because you allowed metal in my neighborhood, I can put on a mill finish 26 gauge 5E roof, which is the cheapest roof you could possibly put on. It's going to look like a cheap tin can in the middle of this luxurious neighborhood. And me, as a purchaser, I'm going to drive through this neighborhood and see that and be like, is that what you're allowing in here? Because this neighborhood's going to go to crap, and my property, my investment's going to go downhill. So we I help them come up with a specification of what they will or will not allow. That can be a good compromise for everybody across the board. The owners that want to have metal can have metal and still have a few options, but not necessarily the cheapest. And you're not going to make them buy the most expensive necessarily as well. But you want to make a decision that's going to retain the value of the overall community.
So yes, so going off of that, what has your experience been working with attached roof systems and HOAs in your professional experience?
There's two different extremes. The once, if done properly, get a roof consultant in there, to decide to help educate you can get consultations from multiple roofers. Every roofer, you have to keep in mind that roofers are good at what they're good at. They're going to push what they're good at. But overall, you have to have a consultant decide, of those contractors that do what they're good at, what is the best application. Now that we've looked at the best metal applicators, best tile applicators, and they're all telling us what they think is best, now a roof consultant's going to say, overall for this community, this is the best specification to put out for bid. And then you allow those contractors to bid that specification. Okay. You have to keep in mind that you can't just because somebody owns a roofing company that has two trucks and works out of a garage, in that neighborhood, that he's not going to get. That's, first of all, a conflict of interest. But or you have investors in there that just want a cheaper roof, they want to go with the cheapest option. Those roofing contractors aren't necessarily qualified to phase a project of that magnitude. So you're going to be looking at larger contractors, because larger contractors carry better credit and more overhead and more assets that they can leverage with the bank, to handle a type of a project like this that can go. Some of these projects can go 2 or 3 years, phasing through a community on the re-roofs, and you can be very flexible with how that is paid out and how that's paid out with the HOA and to the individual homeowners, so that everybody can be um, happy with the end product as a compromise of what some people really want over here and what some people want. It's the independent party, and a solution that's the best decision. Or they can just let it fly, and they can say that, okay, if it's a duplex community, okay, you have 2 condos under one roof, um, they need to at least say that okay, here's a specification of what we will allow, but we will only allow one building. The neighbors have to agree. The neighbors have to be able to re-roof that entire building, because what I have going on right now so what I have seen on the bad side is an incident right now, a prestigious um, master community here in Stuart, Florida, and there's a sub uh, community, a little sub community within it, its own HOA. And there was a series of some 25 or 50 condos, 25 buildings, and they allowed either standing seam metal, mill finish, or the same tile that they have. And they said every homeowner can make their own decision, meaning that, so what's happening is the first thing that happened was the guy who owns 2 of those units in there, that's an investor, his insurance was lapsing, so he had to get a new roof on as an investor. It was a big insurance for him, so he wanted to go to the metal for the insurance breaks that he was getting, and he went with the cheapest possible metal. And so now they re-roofed
Ooh.
half of this townhome, of this condo, okay, and the fronts don't even match up. There's no even cut. There's no way to divide. There's no divider. There's no control joint separating one roof from the other. So they had to get into the neighbor's 22-year-old tile roof, chomps all over it, peel it back so that they could waterproof over the ridge and kind of meet halfway in the middle of a valley with their metal, and then repair all the tile on the other side. But that roof is 22 years old. The more you disrupt that tile roof, the more you're tearing up the neighbor's roof. And now that neighbor is married to going back with the same profile, because the cheapest profile, because it won't match. No other roof system's going to match. Not only that, but you're voiding warranty along that tie-in anytime you do that. So it just opens up a can of worms for lawsuits flying all over the place between homeowners, between investors, between HOA. We'll get into a little bit about that, on liability of a HOA and the people on that board and those committees that are making those decisions. So another example is
Yeah.
a quad community down here in Florida. I don't know if you've ever familiar with down here in Florida. I know you guys are all the way on the other side, but we have what are called the Vasta quad communities. They're like X's, okay, and there's 4 townhomes in each one, but the inside of the X is a 2-story townhome, okay. So each L has their own little courtyard, in the square of that X, and they have a 2-story uh, duplex basically, and all the utilities go to the center of that X. So all your air conditioning units, your plumbing, your electrical, everything runs down the center, and that's where the bathrooms are. So the second story bathroom is over the first 4 bathrooms. So if your neighbor has a leak in their roof from their AC unit or something plumbing on their where it meets the roof, it goes into everybody's. There's no way to separate those 4 roofs. And some of these are on concrete decks. Some of them are on wood decks. Some of them are designed so then they have a mansard all the way around, and it's not much of a problem. But when they let those people try to take care of their own little X section, like they have a leak, they go up and they get their roof replaced, but they tie into somebody else's junk roof next door. Then they replace their mansard roof, which is a high slope facial roof, mostly cosmetic, that goes from shingle, and he goes to tile or to metal, and everybody else goes with another shingle. You can probably imagine that these communities will end up looking very, let's say, for lack of a better term, Beverly Hillbilly-ish, very quick.
Yeah.
And you can drive into quad communities around here. There's one up in Vero Beach, and if you're in Southeast Florida, go up to Vero Beach and drive through this quad community. You can see them from satellite. You know where they're at. And it's horrible, and so the rents go down and the value goes down. And basically there was one just north of downtown West Palm Beach just recently that was finally leveled. It just went downhill, downhill, downhill until they just leveled it. Now it's all brand new condos. So good for that new investor. He got cheap property because he had to get rid of all that garbage. But what about all those people that invested in that garbage that wasn't supposed to be garbage? Come up here to Stewart and go to Jupiter and see some of these Vasa Quad communities where they put stone coated steel all over the mansards. They replaced all the flats all at once. They have nice screen enclosures on them. They have high-end landscaping everywhere, high-value cars, people with really good, solid communities, prime locations, premium rents they're getting in those communities. They're gated. They have security. They have everything, all because of the decision they made on the roofing, because they did it as a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that sounds like that would be the key. That sounds like my worst nightmare with all the different roofing systems and the
yeah,
tile and the cheap metal. Oh my gosh. That what a mess. So,
yes.
like when you were sharing the story about the half metal, half tile roof, what liabilities do the HOA board members carry when it comes to the roof?
See, I was
And what
actually,
with the homeowners as well?
yeah. I can't say that the homeowners have too much of a liability other than the fact that the if their roofer that they contracted destroys the neighbor's roof or injures or damages the neighbor's roof, which they're going to do because they're going to be trying to tie it into a new roof into an old
Mhm.
roof. You end up personally a homeowner to homeowner. But the decisions that are being made on these boards, that's where I really wanted to have a legal expert maybe attend this podcast. But there are, but the thing is, this is a national podcast, and the HOA laws are different everywhere anyway. So I would
Right.
only really be able to give you one specifically to Florida. So I wouldn't want everybody to get misconstrued around the country. I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is you need to look into the HOA laws, and when you take a position on a board, it's not just because you don't have anything better to do. You're retired and you just want to tell everybody what to do in the neighborhood and run around and give everybody tickets. That's you get a lot of that in HOAs, and or they come from New York and they come down here to Southeast Florida and they think that they know roofing. It's a totally different world down here. We're not dealing with snow and ice and freeze and thaw. We're dealing with thermal shock and hurricanes, and
Mhm.
very high UV that damages materials on the roof unlike anywhere else in the country. So, it's a whole different animal. And they come down here like they're the experts and they make these decisions that aren't for the best of the community. Now, if I was a homeowner and they started allowing this, and I would be going after somebody. If I started losing my property value because my neighbor put on this cheap metal roof, and now I can't put on an expensive one that I know is going to hold my property value. I'm going to be taking a hit on my property value, and somebody's going to have to pay for that because
Yeah.
you took the decision out of my hands. So yeah, when the HOAs want to only get limitedly involved but not go all in, it's not doing a justice to the community, and the people's investments. So no matter where you're at in the country, you want to look into those things in your HOA law. Community Associations Institute, okay, is a really good resource. Everywhere, even in a region around Florida, CAI will have their local attorneys that are sponsors, and they know all that legal, all that regional stuff. So that's actually who I turn to, my local chapter, who they recommended to have this conversation with me. But then it dawned on me, like I said, it's going to be different everywhere. So tune into your local CAI chapter, Community Associations Institute, and for resources on the legal side.
That's great. Yeah, because myself wouldn't have known where to turn to. And kind of with that, if say like for myself, if my condo complex was in need of a new roof, it's an attached roof system. What questions would you suggest homeowners like myself ask to the HOA and the board, just in terms of figuring out the liabilities, making sure that they're getting multiple quotes, that type of stuff?
Yeah. Is the vote done by a community or is the vote done just by the board? That would be one. Okay. Who is currently on the board? Is there somebody in our community that has experience in this field that is on the board? Um, what are those parameters? Does the HOA make the decisions, or am I responsible for my own? And I'm sorry, but if I would not go into a community where it was up to the homeowner and I'm moving in the neighborhood. I don't know my neighbor. I don't know who that neighbor is going to be. And then if I do know him and I'm in really good condition with him and we're not due for re-roof for 5 to 10 years, who's to say that neighbor's still going to be there? So, um, I'm sorry. There's too many options out there on the residential side in communities. And it needs to be said. You know, my private consultation is Candid Consulting. My initials are KAN. I keep it candid. I tell you like it is, whether it is what you want to hear or not. And people need to hear it, and these communities need to hear it. They need to. There is one I'm talking to right now who they're going to do a one-time change in their bylaws strictly for the roofing. Okay, they've always for years had it phased out, and they've allowed maybe 6 or 7 out of 60 units be re-roofed individually. So they're already starting to see the decrease in, and also the decrease in life expectancy. So you're
Mhm.
beating up these roofs, and you're tying into them twice on both sides, and your 20-year roof is now a 10-year roof because your neighbors are beating them up when they're putting their roof on, and you're beating up their roof, and so the investment is shorter, and it costs you 35 to 45% more as a community as a whole. This one bid I'm working on is basically about $5.5 million project, which you would think is a lot. But it's like 40 some buildings. Okay. But if you were to do it and break it out, the cost per unit individually, it would take twice as long. Your life expectancy would be half as much, and it's going to cost you more like 8.5 million.
Wow.
Okay. I did the math for that community. So these are the types of differences we're talking about. Now, owners are saying they can't afford to do it this way. Well, nobody can afford to do it the individual way because your costs are so much greater. But as a whole, as a community, there's so many options that you can break out banking wise where you can really minimize that addition. It can be a one-time assessment at a much more minimal cost, or it can be added to your HOA fee at a far greater cost and spread out over a longer period of time. And
Mhm.
that would carry that debt onto the new owner. If you don't plan on standing there, you're not the one who has to pay for it. All of that continues on your condo. So there's so many different banking options and finance options to do it that way, and it greatly decreases your costs and it increases your property value. That's
Yeah.
really the way to go.
Um, that's wow, so many good things to think about there. So,
Good things
if a
and bad things.
homeowner
Yeah.
yeah, good things and bad things. If a homeowner is listening to this, hello, homeowner, um, what are some things they should think about that you haven't mentioned before they buy a home with an attached roofing system? Or is there anything left to think about?
I don't think there is. Well, one other thing. Okay, I'm glad you asked the question because it did pop into my head. Talk to the neighbors.
Mm,
If you're looking to buy in a community, there are people roaming around that neighborhood that'd be happy to tell you about
yeah.
all the drama that goes on their board. Okay. And then there's the ones that can tell you all the good stuff too. If it's a
Mhm.
good community, you could talk to anybody in that community and they'll just, and be happy to tell you. Other ones might want to run. It's, oh, don't go there. That's a bad sign. So yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be my bet. That'd be my if you're in the market and you are shopping in communities, condo associations, or HOAs. Just the bylaws are a little bit different in each. Once again, consult with your local chapter of your CAI, and that should help you out. Um, but yeah, talk to the neighbors.
That is such a good piece of advice, and actually a piece of advice that I received also when I started, renting apartments and whatnot. Ask people you run into at the apartment complex, do you like living here? Is the management nice? Do they take care of what
Yep,
you need? So that's some good advice there.
thank you.
Definitely.
I back it up.
Great. Any other thoughts or advice or information to share with homeowners about attached roof systems, HOAs, navigating all of that? Anything else that pops into mind?
Yes. Although an HOA may hire a certain consultant to handle a project like this, you have to keep in mind that even consultants have their own interests. They have their own connections with their own manufacturers and their own contractors as well. Okay, so if you're on a board with a community and they've already decided that this is going to be our consultant, but you have another roofer that's really, really good at this application and is consulting on that behalf, and you really want to consider that too, it's okay. it's okay. You don't have to go with that. Yeah, you paid him to do a lot of work. You owe him the pay to get what, and but a lot of that, what he gets paid continues, depends on who he sells it to, or who gets the job. He may get more out of it by getting a certain contractor to do that job, or a certain manufacturer. There's multiple ways they're bonused or commissioned. So um, but so he does, you want to make sure that he has his fee paid for the work that he has done if you decide not to go with his recommendation. But that you're free to consider other options. You're free to consider a full roofing contractor that is capable of doing its own consultation, ta- talking about the bid that was already put together by the roof consultant. There's pros and cons on every option. Okay, that's the biggest thing to know, is every roof system has its advantages and disadvantages. Every building in that community doesn't have the same set of circumstances. A hurricane comes through here and can level three of them and not touch the rest. It can hit one at this end and this at this end, or the ones that face a certain direction. So everybody's affected differently, and so it makes it really, really difficult. So don't limit yourself and zone it all in to just think that, oh, our hands are tied. This is what we have to do. So there's more package deals available, not necessarily multiple roof consultants, but go with the roof consultant all together. But if you're getting something from the outside that's totally different, but seems to make the same sense that the roof consultant's already saying, you're free to consider it. Put it up for vote.
Well said. Well, Kyle, thank you so much. You've given us so many nuggets of wisdom. I hope people out there listening have been taking notes and have walked away from this podcast with all sorts of goodies to go into homeownership with. So, thank you so much for all your time and your wisdom.
It was a pleasure sharing. It's been very important. I'm passionate about it. I'm tired of homeowners being stuck between manufacturers and contractors and boards and everybody pointing fingers. We all just want to live and get along and love one another, and the world needs more of that. So if we get our ducks in a row on the front end, everybody can be a lot more happier.
Yes, well
Definitely.
said. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
And I'm willing to help in any way I can, even if you're out of state. I've worked for national roofing companies before. I can look at scopes of work. I can tell you what to look for, what questions to ask. I'm willing to help anyone, anywhere, as an unbiased. Any connection that I can make. There are plenty of people that live elsewhere in the country that have investments or contacts in Florida, where that might be a referral for me one day. So I'm happy to help in any way I can.
Absolutely. Glad
It's
to hear it.
wonderful.
Well, everyone, you can go find Kyle's contact information and more information on the metal roof experts at AskARoofer.com on their directory, as well as rooferscoffeeshop.com. So thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you next time on the Ask a Roofer podcast.